All right, welcome back, and thank you for staying with us now for our second part of our discussion segment. We'll be following a lively phone-in segment on Nigeria's corruption perception. Are things getting better? Now we turn to a deeper analysis of the country's ongoing corruption challenge. Now today we focus on Nigeria's corruption challenge, analysing the new ranking and implications. Now, corruption in Nigeria is not just a headline. It is a drain on the nation's wealth and manpower. Our studies show that Nigeria loses not less than 1.5 trillion naira annually to public sector corruption, while inefficiencies and mismanagement in key sectors cost the country billions more in lost productivity and opportunities. From oil theft and subsidy fraud to procurement irregularities and embezzlement, the effects ripple through the economy, slowing development, weakening institutions and eroding public trust. Now, to help us unpack these issues, we're joined in the studio by Auwal Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director of the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Centre, CISLAC, Chairman of the Zero Corruption Coalition, and the National Contact of Transparency International. Now, Auwal Musa Rafsanjani is a respected human rights and anti-corruption advocate with extensive experience in policy, legislative advocacy, and the positive transformation of Nigeria and Africa. Now, this morning, we'll explore the implication of Nigeria's latest corruption ranking, what these losses mean for ordinary Nigerians, and how the country can begin to reverse this trend. Now, stay with us as we dig deeper into the numbers, the policies, and the path forward. You're welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, and good morning.
Yes. Now, I believe it is only right for us to get a brief, overview of the corruption perception index. Now, Nigeria's latest corruption perceptions index shows we're now ranked 142nd out of 182 countries. How should Nigerians interpret this ranking? Does it reflect stagnation, regression, or something else? Because aside from being 142nd out of 182 countries, it scored 26 points out of 100 as well. So could you shed more light so that at least Nigerians could understand whether there is, as I said, stagnation, regression, or there's something else?
Thank you very much. Transparency International every year conducts this corruption perception index to help countries address challenges of corruption. Many countries, when the ranking comes, what they do, they put together a team in their country to look at where are the gaps. Is it the policy gaps? Is it the implementation gaps? Or what is really the problem? Because the idea of corruption perception index is not to bully, it's not to discriminate, it is not to disgrace any nation, but it's an attempt to help it overcome its challenges. So we see some countries in Europe, America, Asia, that are ranked in maybe category that Nigeria belong to. What they do, they make effort to address those challenges. But sadly, in the case of Nigeria, despite the obvious, what Nigerians come in contact with the public sector corruption on a daily basis, you see some shameless people coming to say that the corruption is not, there's no corruption, or the ranking is not favoring the country. But for those agencies that are fighting corruption, which we commend them, which we encourage them, which we support them, we know what they are going through. They are going through a lot of challenges. Some corrupt people, they organize to bully them, to dismiss what effort they are doing, which we believe if these anti-corruption agencies are not in existence, we would have found it extremely more difficult. So we commend the effort of EFCC, ICPC, NFIU, Code of Conduct for keeping the faith and trying to protect the country from total collapse as a result of corruption. Because corruption undermines development, corruption undermines peace and stability, as you can see now. As a result of corruption, you will see there's a total almost collapse of power sector. You see the Auditor General report, which clearly shows how corruption has become endemic in this country. So even without Transparency International ranking, in the country itself, our Auditor General report is damning. You look at the corruption in the Ministry of Power, where billions could not be accounted for. You look at the corruption even in the legislature, in the same report, where lawmakers are alleged to be collecting money from various ministries and parastatal. You look at the judiciary, where even the Chief Justice of the Federation raised concern, and even recently the Nigerian Bar Association President raised concern about how corruption has deeply undermined judiciary. Not to talk about electoral integrity, not talk about procurement, corruption in procurement, not to talk about corruption in the security sector, not to talk about various forms of extortion that you also see that Nigerians are facing in trying to procure public services like passport, like a driving license, and many things. So it's no longer a news that corruption has a serious consequences for our country well-being.
All right. Now, for our phone-in segment, we had this discussion and it gave room for callers to call in and share their thoughts. Now, according to one Nigerian that called in, he said, in Nigeria, corruption is here to stay. Now, what does this say about the efforts when it comes to fighting corruption in the country, and how far do you think what extent are we at this point in fighting corruption, and do you think we're making any progress so far?
So the truth is that it is possible to overcome the corruption challenges that we have, at least to some manageable levels. We don't believe that nothing can be done. We believe that something can be done, and to some extent, some of the agencies that are saddled with the responsibility of fighting corruption are doing their best. If you take away EFCC, ICPC, NFIU, the kind of corruption, the kind of dirtiness you will see in this country would be overwhelming. So we believe that whatever the gaps, whatever the problem we have, we need to come together as responsible citizens to support government to block leakages. The corruption we are suffering are something that is artificial. They are not natural corruption. So you can actually cure it, you can deal with it, if you have the political will. Out of 36 states of the Federation, we don't have 10 states that are actually even having equivalent of EFCC or ICPC, that's anti-corruption agencies in their state. And you know how corruption is endemic at the state level. Almost no accountability in the way some of the governors run their states, because the media is not able to play its own role. It's only in many cases report the activities of the states, not investigating how funds, how policies, how programs are executed. In other words, investigative journalism is almost absent in many places. Secondly, the judiciary is in the hands of the governor. the same thing also with the legislature at the state level. So these are institutions of government that would have helped to check corruption excesses at the state level. And civil society in many states are not also that much prominent or organized. And these are the pressure group that would have helped to reduce the instances of corruption. So if you do not have state institutions that are meant to ensure that they prevent corruption from happening, then you will also have really a huge tax to address the widespread corrupt practices that happens in the state or in the local government. So at the federal level, there are some efforts by the federal government to ensure that corruption through policy implementation, through institutional framework addressed. For example, we have seen how the EFCC, the ICPC have been making recoveries from the looted funds. You do not have such kind of effort going on at the state level or at the local government level. You will have also seen how much the various anti-corruption agencies are recovering money from even legislators, their contractors, and many government agencies that they connive in the name of constituency projects. So you have several efforts at the federal level that is going on, but we need more. We need, to stay away from control, interference, and a stagnation of even resources for those agencies to work.
All right, Mr. Auwal, based on what you have said, you made mention of, civil society groups, investigative journalism, and, the institutions that are in place to help fight corruption. But I believe that, the media are doing their best in, projecting this out, and also some social groups as well. But then let's look at the scale and impact of this corruption in our society. Now, according to studies, it suggests that Nigeria loses over 1.5 trillion naira annually due to corruption, but not including lost productivity and also opportunities. So can you break down what sectors are most affected and how this impact ordinary Nigerians? So
the illicit financial flow, popularly known as money laundering, happening because government allows it to happen, because our financial institutions are being used to launder money. The banking sector, they do whatever they like, because this money is not taken in your pocket or in Ghana must go. It goes through financial institutions. So there's no way you can effectively fight corruption if you don't sanitize financial institutions in Nigeria. Quite all right, to some extent, NFIU is doing its best. But when it comes to issue of money laundering, there are a lot of schemes, or there are a lot of ways in which corrupt people are doing to siphon public taxpayers' money. So the huge amount that is being taken out from Nigeria almost on daily basis is scandalous. These are resources that are meant to improve the lives and the well-being of Nigerians. These are resources that are meant to help protect Nigerians from attacks by crooks, criminals, bandit, terrorists. But this money, in many instances, like even the Auditor General, mentioned in his report, this money cannot be accounted for. Just recently, a court in the UK ruled out about the money that have been stolen that are meant to buy arms and ammunition. In Nigeria today, just check the auditor report again, you will see that arms and ammunition that are supposed to be given to the police, to the army, cannot be accounted for. In fact, even the National Security Advisor had mentioned how arms and ammunition disappeared within the security institutions. This is to tell you the extent at which corruption has deepened. If corruption would be allowed to get into the security sector, where lives and properties of Nigeria no longer matter, because the resources that have been given to buy arms and ammunition and pay personnel who are doing their work and paying with their life are stolen. You have heard in this country how some general were caught with cash meant to pay allowances of the soldiers that are putting their lives. So these are not concoctions. These are things that are happening on daily basis. Or is it that the contract that some people will commit, despite the public procurement law that we have, some people will go and inflate contract, or they will not even execute the contract and they collect the money. In this country, we are seeing that. Or are you talking about the educational sector, where even the little funding that goes into the educational sector cannot be accounted for? The same thing also on the health sector. So if you destroy security, if you destroy healthcare system, if you destroy education, if you destroy, power, then you have thrown the country and the people into chaos. And that is why you see we no longer get respected. If you go to the nearest border to Nigeria or nearest country that we are bordering with, you are no longer taken as a responsible person, because you have a compromised system that promotes and tolerates corruption and corrupt practices.
Right. Now, part of the issues that have been pointed out by CISLAC as well as other civil society organizations that undermine anti-corruption efforts are judicial compromise, nepotism, appointments, as well as selective enforcement. Now, how do they have an immediate effect in how things go when it comes to transparency and accountability in public institutions?
Judicial corruption is a major threat in Nigerian development, progress, peace and stability. When people openly rig election and they tell you, let's meet in the court, because they have already secured judgment from corrupt judicial official, you have already compromised justice. When you cannot seek justice because you don't have money to pay bribe, the entire administrative justice system is compromised. You go to police station, you brought complaint, in some instances, the case turned against you. That is why you see many Nigerians that don't want to go to police station, they don't want to go to court, because it's a purely waste of time and resources. So when citizens are losing hope and confidence about the ability of the state to dispensate justice, that's a major problem. Now, if you look at the impact or the consequences of corruption, you could see that it has a serious, ramification on the citizens. And that is why we think judicial corruption is a big threat, because it will not allow you to even have the institution to run in the manner that can have strengthened system in the country. In terms of the appointment, you see that people are procuring appointment. They're using dirty money to procure election. You see how some Nigerians are also engaged in all form of corrupt practices, buying promotion, buying appointments. These are things that happens in Nigeria. So even for you to get admission, you have to pay bribe. For you to be employed, even though you merited, you have to pay bribe. For you to get promotion that you deserve, that you merited, you have to pay bribe. So I can go on.
So now corruption has eaten into the fiber of Nigeria, of Nigerians, and everybody. Now,
In fact, even in the religious institutions, corruption has entered there. So that is why it is a collective action that is required. Every citizen must contribute on his or her own role, whether at the family level, whether at the community level, whether at the governmental level. Every one of us, we must play our own role if we really want to deal with the corruption. Otherwise, already corruption has already disgraced us. Corruption has made us to look irresponsible in the community of nation. If you carry your passport, you travel, the immigration officers there, they'll be looking at the passport, concluding that you are a fraudulent person, because this is what's the wrong message that have been sent all over the world.
Now, what happens with selective enforcement? We've seen situations where, for example, the FCC takes up cases and you see what is going on, but at the end of the day, everything just disappears. So do you think that is one of the major issues that we do have, because nobody is held accountable, or most people are not held accountable in cases like that?
So in the course of this conversation, we talk about judicial corruption, where some people procure justice or deny justice, or we also talk about the political interference. Sometimes people in the government, if they are interested in a case, that case may not likely go anywhere. We have examples of many cases, but the issue is that in terms of selective justice, in terms of arrest, investigation, you cannot arrest everybody at the same time. So, and I can assure you that EFCC, ICPC will not arrest you if you have no case. So anybody that you see being investigated or being tried by EFCC or ICPC, that person has committed an offense. So the issue is that if the anti-corruption agencies are not able to prosecute everybody at the same time, one day, those ones that they are being maybe shelved because of political consideration, another regime will come if the media and civil society and the people continue to cry about the evil that that person has, especially if there's any evidence. I assure you that it will still, happen. Secondly, at the international level, we will also make sure that that person, if there's a concrete evidence of corruption involvement, we will make sure that he or she also suffer the consequences of that. Some Nigerians have run away from Nigeria, or rather they are freed by a judicial system in Nigeria of corruption, but they cross the next country, they are tried, or they have been tried. So if you escape justice in Nigeria because of money that you pay, or bribe that you pay, or political consideration because you have come to the ruling party, just wait, you will see what will happen to that person in another jurisdiction.
Okay, so for that, now let me ask you this question that is comparing Nigeria with other countries when it comes to fighting corruption, because countries like some other African countries like Botswana, like Ghana and the likes, they have consistently outperform Nigeria. And when CISLAC studies these places, what really stood out for them? Is it that they had, stronger judicial law, or they had stronger punishment as to those either government officials or anyone that is found wanting in corruption cases? What exactly did they do differently? And how can Nigeria, look up to these other countries and pick up these lessons and also implement them in our country?
So what has happened is that in Nigeria, we used to have so many people in various institutions with integrity and merit. Their appointments were purely on merit and based on their track record. Today, many people are appointed in various places, paid to be in those places. So if you use dirty money to procure appointment, whether in the election tribunal, court, you paid to be there because you're going to make money, you will expect definitely what will come out of that place. If you pay bribe to get posted to a particular place as a police person, you know what will happen. That person will make sure that he recovers his money. If, as a legislator, you go and borrow money in the bank to pay all the election-related campaigns and their activities, when that person comes to the legislature, you know the primary objective is to recover those monies. So when you commercialize and privatize institutions of government, it's dangerous. When you don't want people who are honest, who are sincere, to be in a place, you make them to have a compulsory retirement because you want to replace them with crooks and criminals that you are promoting so that they continue to depend your interest. System is compromised. So in these countries, they have not reached this level of degeneration that we have degenerated in Nigeria. There are people who will stand up in the legislature when there are something that is done wrongly by the executive arm in their country. They would speak about it. In Nigeria, it's almost a taboo now to criticize even policy. You will be sanctioned in the legislature. So when people of integrity are being removed systematically or prostrated or blocked, then you will have what you have today in Nigeria. In those other countries, you will still have institutions and people with impeccable character speaking against the evils in their country. In Nigeria, if you try to do, to be honest, to be sincere, to be committed, to shun corruption, they may even frame you. So that you are also being seen as part of the bad guys. So it is the collapse of our institutional integrity that has landed us to where we are. Look, even if the politicians are doing their corruption, once you destroy the public service, civil service is supposed to be the engine of governance. And when you destroy that system, you replace it with the mediocres, with the characters that did not even understand and know the value of the system, then you have a total compromise system. That is why our own problem is a double problem.
All right. Mr. Rafsanjani, if we are honest, we know that Nigeria has battled corruption for decades. At this point, is it realistic to expect a real change soon? Or is this a long-term generational effort? And aside from that, what can Nigerians do immediately to support anti-corruption efforts in their own communities and hold leaders accountable?
I can tell you that it's possible. It's just about having political will. And I will give you some examples. Before we have public procurement law, the kind of corruption that goes on in the procurement process, people are giving contract to themselves, to their boyfriends, to their girlfriends, and no system observed. Now, one public procurement law was enacted and signed by President Eradua. At least it started with having some level of sanity. And even today, despite the lapses, you still see some observation of some process in the procurement thing, which means that if we still have the political will, we can actually maximize that law to reduce corruption in procurement. Secondly, before the coming of the EITI, which we had the Nigerian version of NAITI, nobody knows or nobody has an idea on the corruption that was involved in the oil sector or in the extractive sector. Despite the continuation of these problems, Nigerians have an idea on the looting that is going on in the extractive sector, oil theft. We have an idea on how much companies are not paying tax to the government. We have an idea on how we could minimize these excesses of corruption in the oil and gas sector. So what I'm trying to say is that, if there is a political will, you can reduce the instances of this corruption. Secondly, if you have people of integrity in a place, they can drive a process of change. It may not happen overnight, but at least you can block leakages. You can block leakages. When Buhari came, there was so much expectation in 2015. And some Nigerians who, chop contract money, they started fixing what they were supposed to do in anticipation that Buhari was going to deal with them. Sadly, many things went wrong and the business went as usual. It was in 2016 that Buhari made some pronouncement at the London conference where the former British Prime Minister, where he called Nigeria fantastically corrupt, that for Buhari to have made some certain pronouncement to fight corruption, even the corruption perception index changed. So it's all about political will, commitment by every citizens and every government official to lead by example and do the needful.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Rafsanjani, Auwal Musa Rafsanjani, for being here and shedding more light on this corruption perception index and how Nigeria should face corruption and make sure that we get out of this rut. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
All right, we'll be diving into our newspaper review straight up. We have Daily Trust, and right in front on Daily Trust, we have Senate's e-transmission approval raises new questions.
U.S. to deport 97 Nigerians over immigration offences, and that's on page 25 of the Daily Trust newspaper.
We have 10 killed, many abducted in Kogi and Benue, that's on page 8.
DSS refuses to release teenager abducted by personnel, and that's on page 6.
We have NIMET predicts early rainfall in Kano, Niger, Rivers, 12 other states, that's on page 3.
Woman arrested for allegedly poisoning co-wife in Gombe, and that's on page 6 of the Daily Trust.
We have son conspires with hoodlums to abduct father. That's on page 25 of the Daily Trust.
And lastly, on Daily Trust article, Makinde visit IBBX, Vice President seeks backing for ADC, and that's on page 13 of the Daily Trust newspaper. If you want more, you can grab yourself a copy.
All right, with that, we've come to the end of Daybreak on Trust TV. Thank you to all that stayed tuned with us all the way to the end, and thank you to all our guests for contributing so much to the show. I'm Hauwa, Adamu, Kiyawa. Make sure to tune in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. so don't miss out on engaging and interesting conversations, as always, on Daybreak. Thank you for watching.
And I am Maimuna Bagudu. Follow us on all of our social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more news. Have a great day and stay safe.